We are now called together, called by bell and bird, called by oak leaf and pine needle, called by the beat of our hearts, to join again the living tradition we share, to answer again the call to wisdom, and to respond to love. Today, with the bell ringing from Big Ben in London, and the nightingales singing in Africa and Europe, let us remember the third and fourth of our tradition's sources. Wisdom from the world's religions, which inspires us in our ethical and spiritual life, and Jewish and Christian teachings, which call us to respond to God's love by loving our neighbors as ourselves. Good morning. Welcome to Community Unitarian Universalist Congregation at White Plains, former home of the Lenape Nation and of the Eastern Cougar. I'm the Reverend Meredith Garmon, minister.
I'm Reverend Deb Mora, community minister in affiliation with this congregation, and your worship associate today.
And I'm Adam Kent, this congregation's music director.
Welcome to this home of liberal religion. Here we affirm that it's a blessing you were born.
It matters what you do.
Your experience of...
And, say it with me, you don't have to
go it alone.
Today is the 11th Sunday of autumn, signified by the 11 oil lights beside our chalice. The cold moon is waxing gibbous and will be full on Wednesday night.
On the Christian calendar, today is the second Sunday of Advent. Advent, the 4 Sundays before Christmas, is a season of anticipation. In some traditions, the 4 themes of Advent are hope, peace, joy, and love. The second Sunday of Advent, the theme is peace.
We give a special welcome to our visitors. If you're new today and you feel comfortable being recognized, please wave a hand so we can welcome you. If you are new here today online, please introduce yourself in the chat.
Those online can find a link to the order of service on our website, cuucwp.org. For November, our it's December. Is this the share the plate for December? For December, our Share the Plate funds go to the Ecumenical Food Pantry of White Plains. You may use the donation button on our website to contribute online to the plate share, as well as for your pledge and for the minister's discretionary fund.
If you have a joy, sorrow, or milestone you'd like to share, you may write it in our Joys and Sorrows book on the table to my right. And for those of you at home on Zoom, enter it into the chat, making the first word be joy or sorrow or milestone.
Announcements?
Yes.
Now through Sunday, December 18th, we're collecting gift cards for the Coachman Family Center. There is a table for that in the fireside area.
And now, through Sunday, December 11th, we are having a drive for gently used toys and stuffed animals. Our hunger and homelessness team is collecting these to donate to the Ecumenical Food Pantry. Look for the collection boxes in the 2 lobby areas, and be sure not to miss today's wonderful choir concert here in the sanctuary at 1 p.m. They are here this morning to preview one of the pieces from Vivaldi's Gloria. The concert later is not to be missed.
Next week, December 11th, is the Social Justice Holiday Book Fair in the fireside area from noon to 3 p.m.
And on Monday, December 12th at 7:30 on Zoom, our Racial Justice in the Spirit of Truth team invites all of us to a conversation of the recent New York Times column by James Bowie, How a Still Segregated Country Holds Us All Back.
Please do read our weekly e-communitarian newsletter for more details and lots of other exciting goings-on at the congregation.
And if you are interested in becoming a member of CUC, speak with me or contact the office to make an appointment. And now Mary Cavallero will clarify what the plate share this month is all about.
Good morning. Yes, it is December, and the Hunger and Homeless Committee sponsors both the Ecumenical Food Pantry in November and the Coachman Family Center in December. So it actually is December, so it should go to the Coachman gift cards. And the other clarification is there is no table in the fireside area. We put the table in the hallway, in the lobby, and we will also be collecting in the fellowship hall at coffee hour. So here's my plea for the Coachman. J.C. Good could not be here today, and she asked me to do this. Well, this week, I helped a 4-year-old write a letter to Santa. This was a joy. But he wanted a train, a red train, a cement truck, a garbage truck, and a dinosaur. His parents can afford to get him presents. Today, there are over 200 kids at the Coachman, the homeless shelter in White Plains. These children may write to Santa, but I think they might know not to ask for so much. For over the last 20 years, our congregation has helped each child at the Coachman get at least one present. How do we do that? We simply donate money. We provide enough money to buy 200 gift cards at $25 each. This year, we already committed to sponsoring the 200 school-age children at the Coachman. These are my kids and yours. Please take advantage of this opportunity to foster compassion and to assist those in need right here in our own city. My husband told me to add that thing about these are our kids, and I cried when he suggested. I knew I couldn't get through that, I'm sorry. But it's real. Today we have a table, well, I already told you that, table in lobby, one in Fellowship Hall. And if you are at home and you want to donate from our website, or if you want to do it later from our website, you go to the CUUCWP.org site, and you go to the drop-down menu, and I think it's the very last one, Coachman gift cards. We just can't let these kids down. Please be their Santa. Thank you.
In this refulgent summer, it has been a luxury to draw the breath of life. The grass grows, the buds burst, the meadow is spotted with fire and gold in the tint of flowers. The air is full of birds and sweet with the breath of pine. At night the stars pour their almost spiritual rays. Thus Ralph Waldo Emerson began his divinity school address, delivered in 1838 when Emerson was age 35. When he strolled into the chapel that Sunday evening to address the graduating class of Harvard's Divinity School, their professors and assorted local clergy, he was a former Unitarian minister who had resigned from Boston's Second Church 6 years before. He was pursuing a career as an essayist and lecturer, though he still used the title Reverend and was frequently a guest preacher in Unitarian pulpits. His audience was at the center of academic Unitarian thought. From that gentle and reassuring beginning, before his hour-long talk was ended, his audience would be stunned. In Emerson's journal a year before, he had referred to corpse-cold Unitarianism, and though he avoided the phrase in his address, he castigated the church's ministers for suffocating the soul through lifeless preaching. He critiqued the failures of historical Christianity and advanced the tenets of transcendentalism against conventional Unitarian theology. Moral intuition, he said, is a better guide to the moral sentiment than religious doctrine, and there is true moral sentiment in every individual. He rejected the notion of a personal God and discounted the necessity of belief in the historical miracles of Jesus. Emerson was through with Unitarianism, but Unitarianism, it seems, was not through with Emerson. Though many of us staunchly resisted, his ideas began seeping into the pulpits and pews of our congregations.
That's the 101st UU minute that Reverend Garmon has written over the past couple of... When they talk about taking online courses, you can too. There's a YouTube channel where all of these live right in a row, if you ever would like to revisit or laugh at some of my dumb sound effects. Thank you. I'd like you to take a moment, please. Take out those cell phones, put them on mute. I don't see anyone doing anything. Come on. I invite you to rise in body or spirit for our opening hymn. It's number 188 in the gray hymnal. Come, come, whoever you are. Those of you who are with us on Zoom, good morning and hello. You can find lyrics on page 5 of the online order of service linked in your worship reminder email and on our website, cuucwp.org. You'll see the choir making their way to some of the sections in the room so that we can do this round this morning. And what'll happen is we'll hear Adam play it first alone, then we'll all sing it together in unison, and then we'll break into parts and sing it once, and we'll direct you on that, so you'll know what to do.
On the 11th Sunday of the season, we dedicate our chalice to the third and fourth sources of the living tradition we share. Wisdom from the world's religions, which inspires us in our ethical and spiritual life, and Jewish and Christian teachings which call us to respond to God's love by loving our neighbors as ourselves. We invite those online to light a chalice or candle at home, then read along from the order of service link in our website, cuucwp.org. Please join with me in the responsive chalice lighting words from Reinhold Niebuhr in your order of service and on the screen. Please read the lines in italics. Blessed is the fire of our faith and the chalice of our community.
Blessed is the living tradition that we carry forward.
Blessed is the transient flame we kindle here.
Blessed is the illuminated moment.
Blessed is the light of the eternal.
Blessed is the sacred call of life to which we give ourselves in answer. Let us be invoked this morning by these wise words from Abraham Lincoln. If you would win a man to your cause, first convince him that you are his sincere friend. Therein is a drop of honey that catches his heart, which, say what he will, is the great high road to his reason, and which, when once gained, you will find but little trouble in convincing his judgment of the justice of your cause, if indeed that cause really be a just one. On the contrary, assume to dictate to his judgment, or to command his action, or to mark him as one to be shunned and despised, and he will retreat within himself, close all the avenues to his head and his heart, and though your cause be naked truth itself, transformed to the heaviest lance, harder than steel and sharper than steel can be made, and though you throw it with more than Herculean force and precision, you shall be no more able to pierce him than to penetrate the hard shell of a tortoise with a straw.
Please join in our sung invocation. We would be one as now we join in singing our hymn of love to
in this season of Advent, this season of waiting. These words from Blessing the Door by Jan Richardson. Those who wait for you know how the mark of a true blessing is that it will take you where you did not think to go. Once through this door, there will be more doors, more blessings, more who watch and wait for you. But here, at this door of beginning the blessings, cannot be said without you. Dear source of healing and wholeness, waiting involves courage, patience, perseverance. We pray for an abundance of these qualities for those who are waiting for answers that may be difficult to hear. For the people on the island of Ischia near Naples, Italy, where several people are feared to have died after a mudslide was triggered by heavy rains. For people of Afghanistan, responding to the public flogging of 3 women and 11 men on November 23rd on the orders of a Taliban court. There is rage and fear and uncertainty for what is to come. For those mourning the violent death of Cassius Turvey, a teenaged Aboriginal youth beaten to death in his beloved country of Australia. The crime's been determined to be racially motivated. The waiting is hard, and there are times when we want to give up. Grant us strength, all of us, as we wait for answers unknown, for answers that will change our lives, for answers that will bring us closer to acceptance and connection. Waiting relies on trust and hope and faith. We pray to be infused with this potent goodness. We are buoyed when we hear at a global summit in Panama, the white-rumped shama and the straw-headed bulbul were added to a list of species whose trade is restricted to prevent them from being traded to extinction. Both birds from Southeast Asia have been devastated by the songbird trade, where birds are captured for their singing ability and used in popular bird singing competitions. And we're grateful that the World Council of Churches gathered in Germany for 10 days of spiritual, cultural, and personal reflection, devoted most of its attention to racism, the rights of indigenous people, and climate change. We grieve for the injustice that seems to permeate the air. And we ask that you, lover of all, help us recognize the myriad steps that are taken in the name of freedom, of peace, of love. May we allow ourselves to embrace this season of waiting. May we surrender our control and open ourselves to spirit. May a quiet inner strength nurture us as we relinquish what doesn't nourish us. May we invite peace into our being, even during times of strife and uncertainty. Ground of being, we wait to catch a glimpse of your light. We wait to hear the news we are anxious to receive. We wait expectantly, as Mary did, and so many women after her. We wait as our commitments and aspirations and the world's surprises continue to change our lives. May we feel our world as a befriending presence waiting with us. So for all that has been spoken and all else that we are holding silently in our hearts today, we observe a minute of silence. Blessed be. Amen.
Oh, we give thanks for this precious day. We're all gathered here and those far away for this time we share with love and care. Oh, we give thanks for this precious day.
As an extension of our time of prayer and blessing, I invite you now to turn to each other and extend the blessing of our wishes for peace.
I invite you to stay standing or stand again in body or spirit for our next hymn, number 194, Faith is a Forest. do and say. Seeds of both meek and strong are scattered in air. Dignity shines undimmed by bigotry's glare. Web of life, may this thread I weave. Help me bear witness to all I believe. Justice be my guide as I seek my way. Lead me into this tender day. Speak through me in all I do and say. Fortune and famine ride the swift winds of chance. Sorrow and pleasure seem united in dance. Web of life, may this thread I weave. Mingle compassion with all I believe. Mercy be my guide as I seek my way. Lead me into this tender day. Speak through me in all I do and say. Thank you. Please have a seat.
The living tradition we share draws on wisdom from the world's religions which inspire us in our ethical and spiritual life, including Jewish and Christian teachings that call us to respond to God's love by loving our neighbors as ourselves. When Jesus is asked, which commandment is the greatest of all, he answers, you shall love. Love the vast, interconnected, inclusive, and creative whole with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your mind. This is the greatest and first commandment. And the second one is like it, love your neighbor as yourself. On these two commandments hang all the law and the prophets. Loving this world, ourselves, and our neighbors, a single joy manifests in both gratitude and generosity. What is ours to do is sustain the heritage given.
The African American spiritual Deep River speaks to faith in a promised land, in a better place, in this case using the metaphor of the River Jordan. I long to cross over into campground. And here it is in an arrangement by actually the British-born composer of African and Samuel Coleridge Taylor.
God is our theme for December. Do you believe in God? When was the last time you were asked that? Maybe it's been a while. As the U.S. has grown more religiously diverse, the question seems to be posed less often, but it has not gone away. So let's look at what this God word may mean, and how we decide what words mean, and how to make sense of seeing why other people are so foolish and pig-headed as to not see things the way we see them. In part one, I want to talk about the principle of charity, about finding common ground, about not dismissing people for having wrong beliefs, but for finding a way to interpret those beliefs in a way that creates the maximum possible shared reality for the two of you. And then in part two, after the choir interlude, I'll take a look at a case where I personally find I just can't do that, where I bump into the edge of maximum possible shared reality for me. We begin with a basic principle of translation. When Western scholars and explorers began encountering people whose language had no known relationship to any language they knew of, they had to develop some principles to guide them in working out how to translate. One of those principles is, if most of what they are saying is false, you're getting the translation wrong. It's okay if a few of their sentences come out as false. They probably have a few false beliefs. But if it's more than a few, then you need to revisit your translation. In other words, what words mean depends on what is true, where what's true references the shared experiential reality. The Westerner can recognize a tree. If the native seems to be calling it a billy goat, it probably isn't the case that the native has this crazy belief that that object that's obviously a tree is instead a billy goat. Much more likely is that the native's word for tree just sounds very similar to their word for billy goat. Philosophers in the 1950s came to call this the principle of charity. When translating, assume the meanings that make the maximum number of sentences come out true. And when interpreting people speaking your own language, assume the best interpretation of the other person's argument. Words mean what they need to mean to bring what is being said into closest alignment with reality. Even if the argument isn't a very good one, interpret it in its strongest possible light. Suppose someone says, if we manage to get people to fly all across the world, then we should easily be able to find a cure for cancer. Not a great argument. You might point out some factors that make curing cancer so complicated and difficult. But what you wouldn't do, following the principle of charity, would be to say, but people don't fly. They just ride inside machines that are able to fly. You wouldn't say that because you interpret the meaning of people fly to include riding in flying machines. Even if you'd never heard that figure of speech before, say you were back at a time when airplanes were relatively new and you'd never before heard the word flying used to refer to riding inside an airplane, you would probably instantly grasp that that's what they meant. You would not think that they had the belief that some humans had sprouted wings or developed powers of levitation. When I was in high school and visited the home of a friend, the friend's mother kindly offered me a piece of cake, indicating I could help myself. It's in the Frigidaire, she said. I grasped that she meant refrigerator, even though her refrigerator happened to have been manufactured by Amana. Typically, we follow the principle of charity automatically and unconsciously. We interpret so as to minimize false beliefs as much as we can. Suppose we're playing a guessing game, and I say I am thinking of a person who conquered Gaul, who crossed the Rubicon, who was murdered on the Ides of March, who famously said Vini Vidi Vici, and who was married to Boudica. Suppose you happen to know that Julius Caesar fits the first four clues, but that Boudica was married to Prasutagus, not to Caesar, who was married to Calpurnia. Your best guess as to who I was thinking of would be Julius Caesar, on the assumption that I have simply made a mistake about who Caesar was married to.
That would be much better than guessing Prasutagus on the assumption that I made a mistake about Prasutagus conquering Gaul, crossing the Rubicon, being murdered in March, and saying Vidi Vidi Vici. Assuming there's one false belief works much better than assuming 4 false beliefs. And guessing Caesar is also usually going to be better than responding, no such person exists who fits all those clues, although you might want to ask if it's a trick question, and do I actually have a particular person in mind? If I assure you that I do, you would say Caesar. And we even go the additional step of interpreting what appears on its face as a false belief as instead a figure of speech, as in the examples of people fly and frigid air. We really go to great lengths to maximize the shared reality as much as we can. And for the most part, we do this effortlessly and intuitively. In the guessing game, you might even begin to wonder whether, heretofore unbeknownst to you, Julius Caesar maybe used Boudica as a pet name for Calpurnia. So in that sense, was married to Boudica would come out also true. That's how far we're often ready to go to be in the maximum possible shared reality with others that we're talking to. So of course, we apply the same principle of charity when someone says God, right? Someone who, speaking English, says God, is evoking a host of associations that have accrued to the concept God over the last 3 millennia or so. Those associations include a source of beauty and mystery, a creative capacity of the universe, a power inspiring gratitude, humility, wonder, and awe, an ultimate context and basis for meaning, value, ethics, or commitment, the widest reality to which our loyalty is owed, a community-forming power, love, the origin of time, the cosmos, a non-spatio-temporal entity that knows things and desires things. Now, maybe for you, that last bit doesn't connect. You can't wrap your head around what sort of figure of speech non-spatio-temporal might be. And maybe you don't think anything except ordinary biological organisms can have knowledge or desires. But you get the rest of it. You get what the cosmos is, and time, and beauty, and mystery, creativity, gratitude, humility, wonder, awe, love, and all the rest. Some of these concepts may be a bit fuzzy, but not so fuzzy as to be unusable. So the maximum shared reality is to adopt the associations you share and try that out. The knowing and desiring part maybe has no relevance, or if it turns out to be relevant, perhaps you can relate to it as a figure of speech. Sometimes I reflect on a series of experiences that seem related, and I ask myself, what is the universe trying to teach me here? And if the universe is trying to do something, then it has a desire to do it. And if what it's trying to do is teach me, then it has knowledge of me and what I need to learn. So I can relate to treating the universe as a whole, as if it had knowledge and desires. Relating to the universe in this way is a helpful device for discerning life's lessons. Imagine that a teacher had intentionally designed these learning experiences. What would the learning objective be? It's a good question and can be a really helpful approach. And as for the non-spatio-temporal part, I'm going to just have to hope that that's not important to the conversation at hand. And if it is, I will have to acknowledge that they've lost me there. I can speak their language even if I know the terms have a different meaning for me as for them. And this is not disingenuous. It's just being charitable. It's just being with them in the maximum possible shared reality. There may, however, still be some reality you cannot share. And I will tell you about a case that exceeds my limits after our interlude. Sometimes I do find myself in a situation where it's just a bridge too far. Here's an example for me. For you, it may not be a bridge too far at all, so this is just me. Near-death experiences. In particular, stories about people near death having a sensation of floating up and viewing the scene around one's unconscious body, spending time in a beautiful otherworldly realm, meeting spiritual beings, some call them angels, and a loving presence that some call God, encountering long-lost relatives or friends, recalling scenes from one's life, feeling a sense of connectedness to all creation as well as a sense of overwhelming and transcendent love, and finally, being called reluctantly away from the magical realm and back into one's own body. I don't doubt that people do have these experiences, and I am awed by how the brain, under the extreme stress of being nearly dead, can generate these impressions that feel, as is often reported, more real than real life. Medical science so far has no great guesses as to the mechanisms through which these experiences happen. Is it oxygen shortage, imperfect anesthesia, the body's neurochemical response to trauma? Apparently, no one knows. So the experiences happen, and we know very little about how or why. So far, so good. But a neurophysician named Eben Alexander had one of those experiences while he was in a coma and examined his own charts after he came out of it, and he claimed that the experience happened while his brain was incapable of any activity. And that's a bridge too far for me. Indeed, investigative articles find it dubious that the precise time of the experience can be pinpointed or that brain activity could be conclusively shown to have been zero at that time. Anyway, the memory of the experience is in his physical brain now, and how could it have gotten there except through physical means? Or consider the case of Maria, a migrant worker who had a near-death experience during a cardiac arrest at a hospital in Seattle in 1977. She later told her social worker that while doctors were resuscitating her, she found herself floating outside the hospital building and saw a tennis shoe on a third-floor window ledge, which she described in some detail. The social worker went to the window Maria had indicated and not only found the shoe, but said that the way it was placed meant there was no way Maria could have seen all the details she described from inside her hospital room. So now we have an empirical claim in literal terms. It's not a poetic metaphor, which is how I usually treat religious language, as often beautiful, often instructive poetry. That's my main strategy for getting into a shared reality. But when there's an empirical claim in literal terms like this, my main strategy is ruled out. Famous as it is, the story of Maria's shoe turns out to be thin on the evidence. A few years after being treated, Maria disappeared, and nobody was able to track her down to further confirm her story. And we know from the telephone game how people embellish and fill in details that they want to believe. I'm not saying that the stories people tell of seeing angels, meeting their deceased relatives, are just fairy tales to be ignored. There are important things to be learned from near-death experiences, about how people make sense of things that happen to them, and above all, about the central role that the stories we tell play in shaping our sense of who we are. Near-death experiences can be wonderful, powerful, life-changing experiences that shed light on the human condition and on questions of life and death. But theology isn't science, after all, it's poetry. Usually I like to say that theology and science cannot be in conflict any more than poetry and science can be. They're just two different enterprises with different purposes. But the claims that are sometimes made about Maria's experience do conflict with what seeing means. To see a tennis shoe means that physical light bounced off a physical shoe and hit a physical retina, which sent signals down a physical optic nerve to be processed in a physical visual cortex. Otherwise, it's hallucination. But the language of science has been devised to be good at helping us control and predict our world. And that is its great power and also its limitation. Science offers us the kind of understanding and explanation that facilitates control and prediction. But we humans have needs other than control and prediction. We want not only to control and predict our world as best we can, we also want a way, a language, that will help us befriend our world. And a friend is never wholly predictable. A friend needs to be more or less consistent. They need to have a sense, we need to have a sense of what character they have and what would be out of character. And their way out of character actions need to be rare, if at all. A person who's too erratic, whose moods and interests swing too wildly, too often is hard to develop a close friendship with. They need to have a more or less stable personality, but also to not be wholly predictable. They need to surprise you sometimes. And yet that's what makes them interesting. Once, about 11 or 12 years ago, after a sermon I gave at my previous congregation, someone greeted me after the service with just a bit of umbrage at the way I had described us humans. He said, "You talk about us as if we were mere meat." I've been thinking about that ever since. Does he not grasp how amazing and wonderful, how ultimately mysterious and awesome this meat is? Yes, there are certainly mysterious, invisible forces at work. The universe is full of mysterious, invisible forces, and they have names like gravity and magnetism. Isn't gravity astonishing? That mass, just by being mass, would pull on anything else that has mass. Isn't that as miraculous and astonishing as anything could be? And the strength of that pull is proportional to the size of the masses and inversely proportional to the square of the distance between them. And that, I think, is exactly the catch. We don't know what gravity is. It's ultimately profoundly mysterious, but we know very precisely how it will operate. Proportionally to the mass, inversely proportional to the distance. It's that precise predictability that puts it outside of befriendability. The people on the other side from me on that bridge too far about near-death experiences are not calling for recognition of a more amazing or more miraculous reality. Nothing could be more amazing or miraculous than magnets or light or covalent bonds, or viruses. But something could be less predictable. What they want is for reality to have just enough unpredictability to be a friend. And science cannot be enough because for science, unpredictability is always a problem to be solved. So God becomes a way to be friends with ultimate reality. God is the name for the befriendability of the universe. It knows some things, it desires some things, it's reasonably stable while at the same time cannot ever be wholly predictable. I get that. I too want to befriend this world, this universe. The things I do to build that friendship, to recognize it and celebrate it and strengthen it, that's my faith. It's a faith that this world is befriendable and that the world and I are in fact friends, lovers even. It's my willingness to interpret God language with the principle of charity that seeks the maximum possible shared reality that puts faith into my faiththeism. And it's my own befriending of this surprising world that is also the faith in my faiththeism. Amen.
I invite you to rise in body or spirit for hymn number 108, My Life Flows On, an Endless Song.
song above earth's lamentation. I hear the real, though far off hymn that hails a new creation. Through all the tumult and the strife, I hear the music ringing. It sounds an echo in my soul. How can I keep from singing? What though the tempest round me roars? I know the truth, it liveth. What through the darkness round me close? Songs in the night it giveth. No storm can shake my inmost calm, while to that rock I'm clinging. Since love prevails in heaven and earth, how can I keep from singing? When tyrants tremble as they roar, the freedom ringing. When friends rejoice both far and near, how can I keep from singing? To prison cell and dungeon file, our thoughts to them are ringing. When friends with shame are undefiled, how can I keep from singing?
Thank you.
It's time again for our eco-spiritual practice for this month, brought to you by Community UU's Environmental Practices Social Justice Team. Transformation. Transformation is life, and death and decay are integral to life. The leaves that fall in autumn provide nutrients for the green shoots that emerge in the spring. Predator devours prey. Thousands of neurons in a newborn's brain die in order for others to form connections. Without these cell deaths, the child's development would be impaired. Sometimes death may feel untimely. The fox finds the mother rabbit's burrow. The baby zebra ends up in the lion's mouth. The eggs grow cold from exposure and never hatch. The evolution of new forms of life requires extinction of other forms. Life flows onward and death flows onward, cleansing, clearing, and recycling the raw materials of life. Life and death are really one process, a process of continual transformation. We and everything else that exists are always in the process of being, becoming, dissolving, evolving, transforming. Our lives ripple over the ocean until we peter out or run aground, but we are never separated from the larger whole. Eco-spiritual practices for this month include: first, arrange items on your altar into categories alive and formerly alive, and reflect, how are your alive items in the process of transforming into something not alive? How are your formerly alive items in the process of transforming into something alive? Second, imagine your own funeral. And finally, over the next several months, journal your observations of the life cycle of a plant from seed to seed. For the details on these, as well as group activities for your eco-spiritual group, see the post at cucmatters.org. The link is in your eCommunitarian.
Thank you for being with us this morning. Please join me in gratitude for our worship team, musicians, greeters, ushers, and tech team. We invite those here with us in the sanctuary to stay for coffee and refreshments in Fellowship Hall. Parents, please pick up your children from childcare beforehand. Be sure to come back to the sanctuary for the 1 p.m. choir concert, and you can also watch the concert online via Zoom. Please remember to place your name tag in the basket in the lobby when you leave today. Those with us on Zoom can Those with us on Zoom can log out of the space after the service ends and log into our virtual coffee hour Zoom room. The link is on our website, and we will post it in the chat. As we extinguish the chalices here, those at home are invited to extinguish their chalices. Now please join me in saying the chalice extinguishing words. We extinguish this chalice, and we carry with us the light of universal love, shining the way for ourselves and all others.
And now for those of you who see God, may God be with you. For those who seek a better way, may the path be found and the courage to take it step by step. Go in peace.
Please rise for our sung benediction.
Spirit of life, come unto me. Sing in my heart all the stirrings of compassion. Blow in the wind, rise in the sea. Move in the hand, giving life the shape of justice. Roots hold me close, rings set me free. Spirit of life, come to